So it is 2 o'clock, so I think we should get started. So welcome everyone to another edition of Equidox Webinar Wednesdays. This week we're going to be talking about a path to PDF accessibility. So trying to guide you to a more efficient PDF remediation process. So as always, I'd just like to mention if you would like to discuss your organization's needs or maybe talk about our software a bit more, if you'd like to see a one-on-one type of demo, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our website is also equidox.co. We'll get into the actual steps to PDF accessibility. So first things first is kind of establishing like where do we start when it comes to PDF accessibility. So we have an 8-step process that we have defined. We would certainly encourage your organization to use this type of process or some sort of modification to this process that works best for your specific organization. So the first step would be to assign the staff. The second step would be evaluate the scope. The third would be create a written plan. Fourth, prioritize the documents. Fifth, choose a tool or a vendor. Sixth, remediate the documents. 7, validate the documents. And 8 is maintenance. So we're going to take a deeper dive into each of these 8 topics on the next slides. Okay, so first, assigning the staff. So you really want to choose the correct team. So assign a person or a team to manage the project. Choose whether you will use an in-house team of remediators or a vendor to do the work for you. Also assigning staff for training, validation, and maintenance. So it's really important to figure out exactly which departments in your organization are going to kind of take the lead when it comes to managing the PDF content, whether it be on your website or intranet. So is it going to be coming from the marketing and communications team? Is it disability services? If you have a division for disability resources in your organization, is this something that IT or the webmasters are going to take charge of? Or also figuring out, do you need to hire in outside staff? So maybe you don't have the bandwidth in your current team. Maybe you need to look externally and actually make some additional hires to bring in people that either have accessibility experience or just in general to remediate documents if you have that type of backlog. The second step would be to evaluate the scope. So many PDFs and so little time. So first, removing outdated or unnecessary files to reduce the workload. Next would be to evaluate the number of PDFs to be remediated and also their complexity. And also decide what will be done in-house versus what will be outsourced. So you really don't want to spend the initial phase of your PDF remediation workflow going through outdated backlogs of documents. So these would be things that you would probably want to put towards the end of the pipeline. So if you've got old advertisements or meeting minutes from 20 years ago, these are the types of documents that would be lower in priority. So you really want to try to audit yourself and figure out what kind of documents do you have currently floating around on the website? Are documents being produced on a daily or weekly or monthly basis? Figure out what is going to be most impactful when you are choosing which documents to remediate first. The third step would be to write a plan. This is going to help you get on that roadmap to creating accessible documents. So establish a timeline. Do you have external or internal deadlines or possibly both? You might have to set expectations of responsibilities. So who is supervising this project? Who is going to be actually doing the remediation? Who will be validating the documents? And who is going to handle the future documents? So documents that are being created on a regular basis, you want to make sure that you have a plan in place to manage those as they're created versus creating another backlog for yourself that you then have to work through all those documents down the road. So having a written plan will offer some protection from a lawsuit, if you will, but you really have to make sure that you're executing that plan that you write. So you have to take it a step farther than just having some written plan. You want to make sure that you are putting that plan into action and actually following through on what you have put in writing. The fourth step would be to prioritize the documents. So I did mention this briefly on the second or a few slides back. But what comes first? So we would recommend that the most used documents come first, the most recent documents next, and then the third ranking in priority would be the lowest complexity, and then the fourth ranking in the priority would be everything else. So we want to make sure that you're going to have the most impact on the most amount of people. So the documents, if you have these types of metrics from your website or your intranet, the documents that are most frequently interacted with, so they're opened the most often, those are obviously documents that are high priority. Those are the ones that the majority of people are going to be using on a regular basis. Also, the most recent documents. So you want to make sure that you are not creating a bigger problem for yourself as you work through this. So those documents that you're producing on a regular basis, the stuff that has the most up-to-date information about your organization, you want to make sure that you are also prioritizing those. Third would be lowest complexity. And the reason for that is because the complexity of a document can really impact how much time it takes to make it accessible. So if you are able to get through lower complexity documents, you're typically going to be able to work through a lot more content in a shorter amount of time. So if you choose to work on the highest complexity documents, then you're not going to be having as great of an impact because you're going to be spending more time working on those more complicated elements. It's not to say that complicated documents should be completely ignored, but we would say that you can create more accessible content quickly if you choose to work through those lower complexity documents first. And then the fourth would be everything else. So that would be, those older documents, something that might be outdated, things that you might choose to, put in an archive somewhere, that stuff that's just not necessarily being used on a regular basis, or it's very old, or it's highly complex and it's going to take you a little bit of technical know-how and some nuance to get through the remediation of it. So the fifth step in this process would be to choose a tool or a vendor. So are you going to do this in-house or are you going to outsource? So first, do you have the budgets? Do you have the staff? How much training does your staff require? How many people need to be trained? How much content needs to be remediated? How much new content is published on a regular basis? And also, what is your timeline? So kind of understanding all of these different factors can go into your decision making, whether you want to bring in a software tool to remediate things internally, or if you would like to outsource. So it really, if determining if you have a budget is really the ideal first step, because do you want to spend money on an annual subscription to a software tool? And then, of course, you have the expense of human resources having to use that software. Or do you have the budget to outsource? Now, outsourcing documents can get expensive because if you think about it, you're remediating at the per page level. Most remediation services are going to charge you on a page level. So understanding that if you have hundreds of thousands of old PDF pages, outsourcing that can really kind of add up to a pretty large invoice at the end of that entire process. But also you have to consider, do you have the budget for a lawsuit? So these are things that cannot be ignored. It's at some point you have to make a commitment and choose a path that you want to go, because you're not going to want to be sued over having your website and your intranet full of inaccessible content. So just understanding these types of things can go into that budgeting decision, and also understanding the technical expertise of the people that you have on staff. So step 6 would be to remediate the documents. So making every PDF accessible. So working through the documents using the plan, whether that be in-house or outsourcing, and tracking all of the documents to be sure that none are missed. So if you're using a tool to remediate documents, you also need to make sure that you're confirming that everything is in fact accessible before you post it to the website or distribute it to your clients, whatever it may be. If you're outsourcing documents, that is typically included as part of the price of that remediation service, where they are validating documents for you. But you also need to make sure then, of course, you are replacing the old documents with the new documents that have been provided by the remediation service company. And nothing, of course, will stop you from doing your own sort of third-party validation of these documents if you were to outsource them. So we would always encourage additional checking and confirmation that everything is in fact accessible and usable in the documents, whether you have done them yourself or whether you have outsourced the documents to a remediation service. So just touching more on that, step 7 is to validate the documents. So are they all accessible and are they all usable? There is a difference between the two. So if you use testing tools to ensure that the documents are compliant, or you can validate using assistive technology to ensure that the documents are usable. There is, just to touch briefly on the difference between accessible versus usable. Many organizations are just aiming for, what we might call bare minimum compliance. So making sure that these documents can pass an automated checking tool, so that they aren't being, tripped up during an accessibility audit for saying that, oh, your document is inaccessible. But there is a big gap between what is bare minimum compliant in terms of accessibility versus what is actually usable. There are many ways to trick these sort of validation tools or these checking tools. So we always encourage you to use assistive technology to really replicate how an end user is going to be interacting with that document, to make sure that everything is navigating as you would expect, to confirm that the reading order has been appropriately set, to make sure that links are taking the user to the correct destination. All of these different elements, you really need to use assistive technology to properly check and validate. The final step in this process would be the maintenance of these documents. So once you get compliant, you want to stay compliant. We don't want to have to go back and retroactively, make all these different types of changes to documents, and we don't want to create a new backlog for ourselves. So accessibility isn't one and done. You need to check new content regularly and make staff accountable for the new content that they're producing. So stay on top of it. Like I said, you don't want to create another mountain of documents that you have to then a year from now or 2 years from now go back and retroactively remediate yet again. So once you've gone through the trouble of remediating your backlogs of documents and getting everything up to speed and up to date, you want to make sure that you are staying on top of that. It's a lot easier to maintain this at the design level and at the sort of document by document as they're being published level versus creating thousands of new documents that then have to go back and be fixed down the road. Okay, so this is a quick slide here, just talking a bit about our competitors. So we are, of course, Equidox, and mainly when it comes to PDF accessibility, when you think of PDF, most people think of Adobe Acrobat, and also another competitor of ours would be Common Look. So this is just a quick little table here that's just going through a few of the advantages of Equidox over Adobe and Common Look. So getting into a few of the details of Equidox. So Equidox is PDF remediation software. We feel that it is easier, faster, and better. It automatically detects PDF elements. So when you import documents, you're getting either existing tag structure automatically detected, or if there is no existing tag structure, Equidox is automatically picking up things like text, hyperlinks, images, pages that require optical character recognition, fillable form fields, so on and so forth. So you're getting automatically detected PDF elements just by importing the document. We also have an AI-powered smart table detector that makes table remediation in PDFs can be very painstaking and tedious and technical and slow if you are doing it the manual way with a tool like Adobe Acrobat. But we have a different approach to remediating tables, and we can spend literally seconds working on tables rather than hours if you're doing it the manual way. We also have an AI-powered smart list detector. So much like tables, lists can be a very tedious and technical type of element to properly tag in a PDF. But again, we have a different approach to it using artificial intelligence, computer vision, and machine learning that allows us to very quickly pick up list tag structures and develop them, whether it's a standard list that's just, like a few bullet points, whether it's an entire page of lists, whether it's a nested list that goes across multiple pages. There are many different types of complicated lists, but our AI-powered smart list detector allows you to very, very quickly tag them with almost no technical expertise required. We also offer the remediation of PDF forms. So fillable forms are sort of notorious for being technical and challenging to remediate. Equidox offers a solution for that. We can very quickly remediate forms by adding in the tooltip for the different form fields. It's a much faster process for tagging forms, which are notoriously slow and take a lot of time. We're also able to add alt text for images all in one place. So alt text is something that's required of images if you're not artifacting the image, of course. But if what we offer in Equidox is a consolidated list of all of the images for the document in one location, which offers a lot of advantages. So if you have things like repetitive logos that are on every page in the document, you can quickly artifact all of the instances of that logo that you don't want to be included in the PDF, and then you don't have to apply alt text to it. Or if you require subject matter expertise, let's say you're in a higher ed institution and you've been asked to remediate a chemistry document that is using all kinds of charts and graphics and tables and things that you don't really know how to provide alt text for because you're not the chemistry expert. Well, you're able to then just work with the professor or the teacher's assistant to get accurate alt text for those charts and graphics, so that you're providing that accurate information to the end user. You're able to then just quickly copy and paste, or have that professor or that teacher's assistant assist you by adding in the alt text themselves. And it makes it very simple because you have all the images. Whether it's 1 page or 100 pages, all of the images can be consolidated to a single location so that you can very quickly streamline your approach for adding in that alt text. Another element is the HTML preview, which is a way of kind of checking your work as you go. So as you're working through a document, you're looking at this, what we would call the HTML preview, and it will show you the structure that you've built in the PDF. So you're able to see things like your reading order, your headings, your lists, your tables. Everything is populating in this HTML preview. And HTML is a very simple, linear format, and it really just is a reflection of how a screen reader is going to interact with that PDF page if you were to export the document. So it's a way of checking your work as you go. You also will get compliance warnings when you export the document. So although we don't really subscribe to the idea that PDF accessibility checking can be entirely automated in terms of compliance versus usability, you are getting information about the document that you're exporting. So it's kind of watching your back for things like illogical heading structure, missing alt text, if you have links that don't have a destination set. There are a number of different checks that are being applied when you export the document. So it's like another layer of protection for you. When you're remediating documents, Equidox is kind of watching your back and making sure that you're exporting a document that has at least logical tag structure. You're also able to collaborate on large and complex documents. So because the way that we work with the PDF, we're able to interact with individual pages. And Equidox being a web-based application, you can have multiple people working together on a document. They don't have to be hunched over the same computer together. They can be in totally separate areas. They can be at home or at the library. It doesn't matter. They can be working from anywhere. But you can actually have multiple people working on the same document simultaneously. So if you have a 200-page annual report that needs to be posted right away, well, maybe you put your 4 best remediators on it, and every one of them takes 50 pages, and they can all be working together simultaneously without disrupting the other person's work. And that will allow them to get through that content very, very quickly so that you can get that document, remediated, validated, and posted to the site. So just talking a bit more about Equidox, we do offer software licenses, and those licenses are a concurrent user licensing model. So what I mean by that is if your organization were to purchase, let's say, 20 concurrent licenses, that means 20 people could be logged in working on Equidox at the same time. But you might have additional users that actually have access to it. It's just a matter of how many are working on the tool at any given moment. We also can offer organization-wide licenses, and we can integrate with single sign-on solutions. So if this is the type of tool that you'd like to deploy to your entire organization, that's definitely something that we can support. We also offer free training and support with Equidox, so we want to make sure that everyone is getting the most out of their subscription to the license. So we do offer training for all new licensed users, and then also support is built right into the application. So if you're having any sort of issues whatsoever, any questions along the way, you can always drop us a line through our support ticketing system. We also can offer a cloud-based or an on-premise version. So I mentioned that Equidox is a web-based application, so you can operate it directly through a browser. Now you can operate through the cloud as kind of like what the genesis of Equidox was a cloud-based application, but we now offer an on-premise version as well. So if you would like to keep this on your own network, on your own servers inside your own four walls, whether it be for just IT security reasons, or if you have, sensitive data that you would like to keep protected inside of your own servers, that's totally an option that we can support now. So happy to talk to anyone after this call. If you have any questions about how that works, we can certainly set up a call to discuss in more detail. And also we offer professional conversion services. So we do have a team of expert PDF remediators on staff. So the conversion services process, it kind of goes like this. So first you will request a quote. Then you will upload the documents, and then our Equidox remediators, our expert remediators, they will remediate the documents using Equidox. And then we put those documents through rigorous validation, including using screen readers. So there's a multi-step validation process that we put every document through, and then we will return those documents to you. So if you feel that you have a large batch of documents that you don't feel comfortable taking on yourself, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to take a look at the documents, and we can certainly give you a quote for what it will take for us to remediate them for you. We often get questions about the pricing model for our services. So pricing is based on three parameters. First, the volume. So how many documents are you working with? How many pages are there? That's a main factor in the pricing, because we do charge at the page level. The complexity of these pages. So are these documents very, very complex, or are they simple, text-based Word documents? It really can depend, and it can impact the pricing. So there's a big difference between, a simple document that just basically contains text and headings versus an IRS form that has 150 fields on it. There's a lot of different things that go into remediating a very complex document. So that can impact the price on how we will quote that document. And also the delivery is another factor. So how quickly does this need to be completed? If you need the document back tomorrow, there are cases when we can certainly support that, but it will impact the price, versus if you're kind of pushing things out, if you don't need the document back for a week or a month or 2 months, whatever it may be, that will also go into the pricing factor. And so, as I mentioned before, the typical workflow, so documents are submitted for a quote, deadlines, standards, and procedures are agreed upon. A system for document transfer between the parties is developed. So whether that be like through Google Drive or one of your FTP servers, or if you want to send it to us through Dropbox, whatever it may be, just get us the documents one way or another. Documents are remediated, validated by our team, and then returned to our customers. And then, of course, we also offer a hybrid model. So this is always something that we encourage. So teamwork makes the dream work. So first, you can obtain our software. So you working through the less complex documents, or perhaps the new content that you're producing. And then you're able to also outsource documents to us. So if you have documents that you have like a short timeline on, if you need it back right away, if you have complicated documents that you don't feel that you have the technical expertise to work through, or if you have a large backlog of documents, you're able to outsource that to us. And also, we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of case studies about how clients work with Equidox. So both using software in-house, our expert remediation and validation, and as well as a hybrid of both software and services. Accomplishing large PDF remediation projects, address the backlog through a vendor service or staff allocations, choose software and train the staff. Make content creators responsible for accessibility of future content, which will both fulfill accessibility goals and also eliminates the need for future large-scale services down the road. And also, of course, perform regular maintenance. So that's just kind of a quick summary of what we've been talking about, but these are all very important parts of the PDF remediation process. And now we have a few minutes left, and I'm just going to turn it over to one of our account managers, Dawn Campbell. She's going to talk quickly about a couple of her clients and how they're best using Equidox and our services.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me today. I'm actually only going to talk about one particular project. I have a number of customers, and I'm always not sure which to talk about because so many of them I am very excited to be working with. But this particular project is a county that is located just outside of Toronto and encompasses 7 municipalities within this county government. So where they approached us was a couple of years ago, because in Ontario there is mandated accessibility legislation, and that deadline actually passed last year. Now, it is important for, again, anyone that might be on this call in the United States to also understand that Canada and the federal government also has mandated accessibility legislation along with many of the provinces. So if you're thinking about doing work here or having business here, you should familiarize yourself with that. Now, this particular county had a very proactive accessibility coordinator that was hired, where she did a lot of training with staff around the importance of designing an accessible document in that source. So that really helped, again, for future. Now, the challenge was that over the last how many years of building a website, they had all of this inaccessible PDF that was already created. So again, this was a team, this was a coordinator of this government that knew Acrobat and was familiar with the challenges of Acrobat and was looking for a tool that again did not require such an in-depth PDF tag tree expertise, and one that offered free training. So that's where Equidox came into play. Dan, can you change the slide for me?
Sure.
So their process was actually really interesting to watch. And again, as the account manager and third party, it was exciting process to watch because essentially they'd had to do an internal audit. It's exactly what Dan talked about already. They did an internal audit to discover what and how many PDFs were on their website. They divided those PDFs based on the departments, and each department within that government was asked to figure out which was most important and where did they want to start, prioritize. And then they purchased 10 software licenses, and a champion was basically created from each of those departments, a champion who understood again and did, work the most in Equidox. So there was free software training provided for all of the relevant staff. Equidox, again, this was a really neat hybrid customer because we realized we had to play catch up from like the last 20 years of all of this PDF. So they did budget to be able to have Equidox PCS team help them with, again, the larger bulk of the historical documents that needed to be validated. And then again, they had the software. So they were able to, again, do projects in-house themselves. Can you change the slide? So again, just as an overview, multiple departments were responsible. This is a customer who has 39 registered users of Equidox, and they come from all of the different departments: communications, community and social services, transportation, corporate services, finance, office of the CEO, and they're in there every day validating and remediating using the tool. The documents that they address are everything from meeting minutes to job posting to agendas to bylaws to reports, a whole array of complexity they're able to address. Last slide, Dan. And again, this is just a quote from myself. Really working with this county continues to be a privilege. They have been proactive in teaching the fundamentals of accessible design while addressing both an immediate compliance issue as well ensuring software and services are in place to remain accessible for their community.
Great.
Thanks, Dan.
So we intended on having a few minutes to go into an Equidox demo, but in the interest of time, it is 2:30 already. I apologize for being long-winded. We will send out this slide deck though, however, and it will contain a previous short demo video of Equidox for anyone that would like to just get a quick overview of how the software works. But I would certainly encourage you to reach out to us.
For more information about how Equidox Software Company can help you with PDF accessibility, email us at equidoxsales@equidox.co or give us a call at 216-529-3030 or visit our website at www.equidox.co.